Right now, there are billions of us. Cities stretched across every continent, satellites orbiting above our heads, 8 billion heartbeats, all descended from the same fragile beginning. But there was a moment, buried deep in our past, when humanity almost ended before it truly began. Not metaphorically, not poetically, almost literally erased. Scientists studying our genetic history found something that should unsettle you. A period where the entire human population may have dropped to a number so small it would fit inside a single stadium. Maybe smaller. Maybe just a few thousand individuals, scattered and struggling, standing between existence and extinction. One bad winter, one prolonged drought, one disease sweeping through that small, fragile group. That's all it would have taken, and if it had happened just slightly differently, none of this, none of us, would exist at all. To understand how close we came to disappearing, you have to understand what the science actually reveals. When researchers look at human DNA today, they're not just looking at who we are, they're looking at a record, a hidden signature, embedded in every cell that tells a story about our ancestors. How many there were, how connected they were, how much genetic diversity they carried forward. And when scientists examined this record carefully, they noticed something strange. Compared to other species, compared to chimpanzees, compared to gorillas, humans have remarkably little genetic diversity. Far less than you'd expect from a species this widespread, this numerous, this successful. Which raised an unsettling question. If we're so genetically similar to each other, despite being spread across every corner of the planet, what does that tell us about our past? The answer scientists arrived at was simple and deeply uncomfortable. At some point, we were almost all the same because there were almost none of us left. This idea has a name. Scientists call it a population bottleneck. A moment where a species' numbers shrink so severely, so suddenly, that it squeezes through a genetic bottleneck like sand falling through the narrow neck of an hourglass. And the estimates for how narrow our own bottleneck may have been are staggering. Some research suggests our ancestors may have been reduced to a population of only a few thousand breeding individuals. Others suggest the number could have been even smaller. Small enough that a single localized disaster, a bad harvest, a harsh season, a violent conflict, could have ended the entire species in one blow. Think about what that actually means. Every person you've ever met, every person who has ever lived, every empire, every war, every language, every love story in human history, all of it traces back through a genetic corridor so narrow it could have closed permanently. But then something even stranger emerged from the evidence. Some scientists believe there wasn't just one bottleneck. There may have been several, multiple moments spread across our species' timeline where humanity teetered on the edge of non-existence and somehow, each time, pulled back from the brink. Which means our survival wasn't a single stroke of luck. It happened more than once. Here's the part almost nobody talks about. We don't fully know what nearly killed us. There are theories. A catastrophic volcanic eruption so massive it darkened skies and disrupted climates for years, possibly starving populations across entire continents. Prolonged periods of extreme climate instability, swinging between crushing droughts and freezing cold, collapsing the food sources our ancestors depended on. But here's the unsettling truth. We can't point to one definitive cause. We can only see the aftermath, a genetic scar left behind, proof that something happened, without a clear confession of what. It's like finding a survivor of a disaster with no memory of the event. The body remembers, the wound is real, but the story of what actually happened is missing. And there's something even more disturbing hiding in this idea. If the population really did shrink that severely, it means our ancestors weren't thriving during this period. They were struggling, small, isolated groups, possibly unaware that other humans existed anywhere else on Earth, fighting for survival in a world that had, for reasons we still don't fully understand, turned against them. They didn't know they were living through humanity's closest brush with total extinction. They just knew they were trying to survive the day. This is where the story stops being about ancient genetics and starts being about something much closer to home. Because we like to think of human existence as inevitable, as if we were always destined to be here, always going to build what we've built, always going to become the dominant species on this planet. But the evidence tells a very different story. Our existence wasn't guaranteed. It wasn't secured by destiny or purpose or design. It survived by threads so thin that a slightly harsher winter, a slightly longer drought, a slightly worse disease outbreak could have unraveled the entire thing. We are not the inevitable outcome of evolution. We are the outcome that happened to survive. And maybe that should change how you see your own existence. Every decision your ancestors made, every meal they found, every shelter they built, every risk they survived was a thread holding together something that could have snapped at any point along the way. You are not just the product of survival. You are the product of survival that almost didn't happen. We build our lives assuming permanence, assuming continuity, assuming that things will keep going the way they've always gone. But our own species' history proves that permanence is an illusion. Even something as vast and dominant as humanity once stood on the edge of disappearing entirely and barely noticed it was happening. Somewhere, tens of thousands of years ago, a small group of humans woke up to another difficult day. They didn't know they were among the last of their kind. They didn't know how close extinction really was. They just kept going. And because they did, cities rose, languages formed, civilizations bloomed across a planet that almost lost its only species capable of asking why. Every person who has ever lived exists because a small, struggling group of humans refused to disappear, without even knowing that's what they were doing. Maybe that's the most unsettling part of all. We didn't survive because we were destined to. We survived because somehow we simply didn't stop.